Here's what I would do if I was a brand new board game designer with the goal of getting a game signed with a publisher in 6 months. But just to be clear, I'm not guaranteeing that you'll be able to get a game signed in 6 months, but if you follow the steps in this video, you'll have the best possible chance of that happening. I created a PDF of all the steps in this video that's free to download. I'll include a link to it in the description. So here's what I would do. I would spend the first 2 weeks doing research to decide if I really do in fact want to pitch to publishers or if I want to self-publish, meaning running a crowdfunding campaign and then overseeing all of the art, graphic design, manufacturing, shipping, and distribution of the game. On day 1, I would order a Crowdfunder strategy guide by designer and publisher Jamie Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games. I'll include a link below if you want to order the book. I would then give myself 2 weeks to read the book. During those 2 weeks, I would also watch these 3 videos about what's involved with running a crowdfunding campaign, and these 3 videos about pitching to publishers. By the end of the first 2 weeks, I would decide on my end goal. For this video, I'm going to assume I picked the goal of pitching and signing a game with a publisher. If you decide to self-publish, I would really encourage you to continue to watch this video all the way to the end because it will still be very relevant to you. A lot of new designers who launch crowdfunding campaigns do not follow the steps that I outline in this video to the detriment of their game and their crowdfunding campaign. So in addition to taking all the steps outlined in this video, you will also need to do research and prepare for launching a crowdfunding campaign and then managing the production and shipment of your game. That information is outside the scope of this video as I have never run a crowdfunding campaign, so I would encourage you to read as many of Jamie Stegmaier's blogs about running Kickstarters as well as joining the Board Game Design Lab Facebook group where there are a ton of other designers who run their own crowdfunding campaigns. I'll include links to both of those resources below. But regardless of if your end goal is pitching to publishers or self-publishing, we first need to make a great game. So in week 3, what I would do might seem premature, but I would book a playtesting session 2 weeks from now. And playtesting is the word we use when we play our prototypes with other people to see how the game works and to gather feedback. And you might say, but I don't even have a game yet. Well, what is more motivating than the shame and embarrassment of telling your playtesters you have failed to present a game to them and you have to cancel the playtest? Shame is one of the greatest human motivators, and we're going to use it to our advantage. So text your friends and invite them to come over in 2 weeks to test some new board game ideas you have, or sign up for a local playtesting meetup in 2 weeks. Once you have that in your schedule, you'll find you magically have the time and energy to actually make a game to test. So after booking the playtesting session in 2 weeks, I would write down 1 to 2 sentences for at least 10 different game ideas. If you're watching this video, you might already have a game that you've been working on for a while and you want to pitch it or self-publish and you want me to tell you how to do that. But how many other ideas have you explored? Is the game you're working on really the strongest one? And is it really good enough to pitch or self-publish? So even if you have a certain game in mind already that you want to pitch, I would encourage you to not skip this step. Take out a piece of paper or a Google Doc and brain dump 10 possible game ideas. Now this can be a fairly overwhelming task if you don't have any parameters to work within. I've made several videos about using different prompts to generate ideas quickly. So I would watch these 3 videos and generate my own ideas as I followed along. I'll link to all these videos below. In week 4, I would pick the 5 ideas that I think have the most potential and quickly prototype them. I would give myself a 2-hour limit to prototype each game. I would reuse bits from other games, I wouldn't get caught up in trying to make the prototype too pretty, and I would find the simplest way to make a physical game out of the idea in my head. Then I would playtest these 5 games on my own, taking turns for the different players to simulate a multiplayer game. It's amazing how quickly you can see if a game has potential or not by just playing it on your own. And this will also save your future playtesters from playing a game that is completely broken. Based on these 5 solo playtests, I would pick the 3 that I think are the strongest. The other 2 would get tossed in a box, the start of my game's graveyard, or archive, whatever you want to call it. I would put these prototypes in clear bags, write their working title on the bag, as well as the date of when I first started it, the date that I archived it, and throw it in the box. In this thought experiment, I am a highly organized individual. but I do like to archive every game I prototype in case I want to revive it in the future or just to look back on my progress. For games that do get published, having organized archive versions of the game make it a lot easier when you write your design diary to look back at the evolution of the game. And for crowdfunding campaigns, you might want to show photos of the prototypes created over the design process. In week 5, it would now be time for the playtest session I booked 2 weeks ago. I would spend this week refining my prototypes and practicing explaining how to play them. And I would watch this video about how to run a playtest and gather feedback. And if you'll be hosting the playtest session at your house, be sure to buy drinks and snacks for your playtesters as a thank you. If you signed up for a local playtest meetup, just know you might not have enough time to test all 3 of your games. And you want to make sure to offer to playtest other designers' games. So just make sure you playtest the one you think has the most potential, and if there's time, playtest the other 2. If not, book another playtest session to test the other 2 ideas as soon as possible. After you have playtested your 3 games, choose which ones you want to continue with based on playtester feedback. Which one did they say they wanted to play again? Which one did they want to talk about the most? And which one had everyone truly engaged? All 3 of them could have potential, or none of them could have potential, and you'll have to go back to generating more ideas. But let's say that one of the games received positive feedback from playtesters. Archive any of the ones that didn't work out, and now it's time to iterate. I would book a playtest session every 2 weeks for the next 3 months. And it's important to schedule these in advance. Having things booked ahead of time gives us deadlines that we have to meet. The next 10 weeks, I would really focus on improving the game as much as possible by going through the iteration cycle of playtesting the game, gathering feedback, updating the prototype, and then testing again. You'll have to go through this cycle over and over and over again. But it is during this time that the magic happens. You will hopefully see the sparks of joy and surprise that you and your playtesters feel when you play your game. If you do, you'll know you're on the right track. But this is also the most frustrating and draining part of the design process. Many people will quit during this phase. You'll get a lot of criticism of your game, and then you'll feel like you fixed everything, only to see it still needs a lot of work. But if you grind through these tests and updates, your game will start to take shape and eventually the pieces will start to fit together. Of course, if this doesn't happen and you realize your game is not working, you'll have to go back to the idea generation phase as soon as possible. In this thought experiment, we're going to assume that our game receives positive playtester feedback to the point where they're spending the majority of their time talking about all the things that they like about the game during the feedback portion of the playtest. That is when you'll know the game is ready to pitch or self-publish. In month 5, I would research publishers and make a list of 10 that I think could be interested in my game. I would walk around a board game store and write down the names of publishers that make games similar to mine. And then I would sign up for upcoming speed pitch events. Make sure you're signed up to my weekly newsletter where I include all pitching opportunities that I know of, and I'll include a link to it below. I would also look to see if there are any upcoming board game conventions happening near me and if any of my 10 publishers will be attending them. If they will be, I would reach out to them by email to try to set up a pitch meeting with them at the convention. During this month, I would also create a sell sheet for my game. This is a 1-page document that includes all the most important information about your game and is a takeaway for any publishers who show interest. Watch these 2 videos where I explain more about sell sheets. I would then create a short 2-minute video about my game. This video does not need to be anything fancy, it just needs to clearly convey the overview of the game, including the hook, meaning the one sentence that you could say to someone for them to be like, ooh, that sounds interesting. Of my list of 10 publishers, any of them who won't be at any upcoming speed pitch events or cons, I would submit my game via their submission form, including my sell sheet and video. In preparation for my speed pitch events and meetings, I would practice pitching the game as much as possible so that I'm super comfortable explaining the game. And I would watch this video about how to pitch to publishers. During this time, I would also continue to test my game. You can always find things to improve and refine in a game, so I always continue to test my games even when I'm starting to pitch them. We have arrived at the final month of this experiment and it is now time to pitch our game. The most ideal outcome is that I would pitch my game to a publisher and they would be so excited about it they would want to sign it on the spot. They would send me a contract in a timely manner. They'd offer me a $10,000 cash advance and an 8% royalty. That likely won't happen. More realistically, a few publishers might show interest and they might ask you to send in a physical or digital prototype that they can playtest more with their colleagues. They would then take 3 to 6 months to decide if they want to sign the game. If they do, they would likely offer an advance between $1,000 and $5,000 and a royalty percentage of 5%. But if we followed all the steps in this video, we would greatly increase our chances of a publisher being so interested that they want to sign the game on the spot, completing our goal of signing a game in 6 months. Now, whether or not you do in fact sign a game with a publisher at the end of these 6 months, you still have built up your creative muscles, improved your communication and presentation skills, gotten more comfortable receiving critiques and feedback, and something tells me you might have even fallen in love with the game design process and have more ideas bubbling up in your brain that you can't wait to get to the table.